We're back. Twigs Cafe Radio, and that's what I say, man. I'm getting a little wiser. Hopefully, I'm definitely getting older. Hopefully, I'm getting a little wiser. I had that twisted around there, Andy, that's for sure. But right now, we have Pastor Haskell from the Jackson Baptist Church. We were talking about your ministry, about the church up in Montrose, about the Black Robed Regiment. Before we get into that, though, Pastor Haskell, I was a little remiss in not at least mentioning how we could get in contact with you or where everything is, or is there a best place to get a hold of you at?
Well, we have a website. It's wearejbc.org. That's our website. We're still getting that developed now. We've got some people doing that for us. And church phone is 570-756-33. I'm sorry, 2265. 756-2265 is the church phone. We're located on Route 92, right in Jackson. Dazzling downtown Jackson, all 850 of us roughly.
Oh.
We're right on 92, about 12 miles north of Lennox.
Oh, okay. So I've been saying Montrose.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's
close
right.
enough.
Yes, sir. About 18 miles off, but you're all right. That's close enough.
Close enough for government stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, the Black Robed Regiment was the name that the British placed on the courageous and patriotic American clergy during the founding era. A backhanded reference to the black robes they wore. Significantly, the British blamed the Black Regiment for American independence, and rightfully so, for modern historians have documented that. And I've been saying this for a long period of time as I've gotten more aware of what's going on, having been in politics, trying to do different things with different parties and all this stuff. And I've said for quite some time, Andy, and you probably heard me on the show here, is that you've got to bring these other groups in. If you're not doing stuff with the churches, with the ministries, you're not going to get anywhere, because really so many people turn to what you're talking, turn to the ministers, turn to the preachers, turn to the priests for a certain amount of guidance. And they're probably going to listen to you a heck of a lot faster than they would listen to me or you, Andy. So, or even our politicians and stuff. So you have an obligation. You really do have an obligation to speak to that. And I think that's what you were talking about.
Well, it's funny that you said that, Lou, because I think you have to earn respect. You just can't demand respect. And I think today many of our pastors, reverends, ministers, rabbis, whatever you want to call them, whatever the case may be, because of their character, they've lost the credibility.
Yeah.
And so, to me, again, we talked about that before, about walking the walk, and God help us to walk the walk before we start to tell people how to live their lives. We have no right to do that unless we're living it ourselves.
Listen, if you want respect, you have to give respect.
Exactly.
And I'm a firm believer in that. And, I think that was taught to me many, many years ago, and it stuck with me. And it just goes no matter what you're doing, your relationship with people and just how you interact with everybody.
Well, we sit and say, how do we have the politicians that we have in office now? How did they get there? They got there because we put them in office. And listen, I'm telling you, I blame the pastors across this country. I don't blame the government. I blame the pastors because they don't teach their people how to vote. Let me give you an example.
Please.
God is a conservative. An example. God is against abortion. He's pro-life all the way. Can't find it in the Word of God anywhere where he's pro-abortion.
Right.
Okay. Number two, he's not Adam and Steve. He's Adam and Eve. I have friends that are homosexuals. You treat them with respect, but it is not Bible.
Right.
It is just not Bible. Thirdly, God's against welfare. The Bible says you should help those that are willing to. If a man if he says he cannot work, then you help him. But he says if a man desires not to work, neither should he eat. You don't want to work, then starve. He said, that's me. No, that's Bible.
Right.
Why should I take care of people? Why should I waste? I get calls all the time from preachers, people saying, hey, can we get some money from the church? And I'm like, well, come talk to me. Let's talk. And you find out they're lying to you. They want it for drugs or alcohol. And I say, no, we'll buy you food if you want food. No, they don't want the food. They want the money. I'm not going to give away God's money to people who don't deserve it.
Well, one of the things, twisting off here a little bit, and I'll just get back to you, but just bringing up that point, when we talked about the initial wave of immigration, people came here and they checked in and they made sure that there was, there were no infectious diseases. They weren't a criminal, but then they had to assimilate in our society. And with that, many needed a helping hand, and they would go to the Polish Legion, they would go to the churches, they would go to the ministries. But I gotta tell you, I know exactly what would happen if I came to Pastor Haskell and said, listen, can you help? I need food. Yeah, okay, I'll help you. And I come back the second day, and maybe by the third day or fourth day, you say you're handing me a shovel and saying go work with Uncle Joe down there because I ain't feeding you for the rest of my life.
Well, I mean, we won't help anybody that needs help, but at the same time, I don't want you to abuse the system.
That's exactly where I'm going with this.
Exactly.
I mean, and that's the difference between, I think, and I really, I'm not trying to talk necessarily about government at this particular point in time, but that's what happens. I mean, people abuse the system because they can, and nobody's holding them accountable.
Exactly.
And I think that's what you're talking about here a little bit.
Accountability is the key as far as I'm concerned.
We're going to get back into the Black Robe thing, but as time does fly by a little bit, I just want to learn a little bit more and talk just about. You've been asked to travel around the world now, right? And training different chaplains, and you have a chaplain program, and you go there, and whether it's Sierra Leone or Bolivia or where people ask you to come teach.
It started with the discipleship ministry. We began to travel. 2004, we began to go foreign to train national pastors on how to do the discipleship ministry one-on-one. They wanted to know how to do that. So our first trip was to Bolivia. And we've been there 7 times now, training, the national pastors how to disciple their people and how to do leadership, counseling, and so on. And then it began to spread. We've been to Panama. We've trained about 35, 40 pastors in Panama. We've been to Romania twice, trained probably upwards of 50 preachers there over the years. Ireland, handful of preachers. That was a smaller trip. But the 2 biggest ministries we've been dealing with has been Bolivia, obviously, and Sierra Leone.
Right.
One of our missionaries, Mike Pepper, went over there at 68 years old. His daughter married a national from there. He used to pastor in southern Pennsylvania, and so he's the one that's got the connections with the government over there. And they gave Mike several acres of property. And they said, if you will start some clinics, medical clinics, and some schools, we will give you some land to build your ministries, and you can start as many churches as you want to. So Mike right now has 11 active churches over there. I had the privilege of helping start one of those a few years ago.
And that's not a predominantly Christian.
70% Muslim.
70%. Let me ask you this: I've never been to Sierra Leone. What is the environment with Christian and Muslim there? Is it antagonistic?
No, sir. The Muslims are very nominal. They have no clue what the Quran says, and they have no clue what the Bible says. So there are strains of Christianity there, and there are a lot of Muslims, but they're very kind. They're not being taught. They're not being taught what the Quran says. Now, if you read the Quran is a very violent book. We're being lied to by even President Bush, who I respected, said that Islam is a religion of peace. It's not. If you read the Quran, anybody that believes the Quran to its 109 times, it clearly says, kill the infidel where you find them. So I'll give you a good book to read, a book called The Secrets of the Quran, a tremendous book on the truth of it. So these Muslims, they're embracing Christianity very rapidly because Christianity is doing for them what Islam has never been able to do.
And what is that?
Well, they're getting
assistance.
First of all, they're knowing Christ. They're getting peace. They're finding a loving God, not a God of punishment, but a God of love, and a God that wants to help them. They're learning that they have spiritual gifts. They're learning that they can be used of God, and they're getting. If you can, first of all, just be forgiven for what you've done and be able to look to heaven and know that God is in favor with you, that's a tremendous thing. So they're embracing that. And the government has approached Mike, and I had the privilege to be in their Pentagon. I had the privilege of being in the third, fourth, and fifth in the country in charge because their president was over here with President Obama getting some kind of an award. When we were there, we were supposed to have lunch with the president, but he was not available at the time. So we were in their Pentagon and prayed with their top leaders and actually sang a hymn in one of their offices over there. So they're very open to learning Christianity, and they're very open to having churches started.
Right.
So they've given Mike 30 acres of property to build a youth center, which they're in the process of constructing that now. I believe he started 4 schools and I think 1 clinic or 2 clinics. A large hospital in Philadelphia gave him a whole container full of medical supplies to help them. They're very poor people. The average lifespan is 44 years old. And the poverty is scary. It is literally scary to go there and see the depth of poverty that's there. But so we're going to do our best to keep going back at least once a year and teaching a conference of about 450 to 500 chaplains every June, teaching the chaplains leadership, discipleship, counseling, these kind of things, and just help them.
So you gave a speech at a Second Amendment rally, which we just kind of mentioned here a little while ago, and basically what that was all about is the history and what the Black Robe Regiment. What does that mean to you? What is some of the history that you think is relevant to and prevalent to the people that are listening here today?
Well, for me, I mean, when you look at the history of where these men came from, and if you look at it, read the facts of this thing, they'll tell you that it probably wouldn't have even happened if it wasn't for the pastors.
Exactly. I have no doubt.
Let me give you a quote. If Christian ministers had not preached and prayed, there might have been no revolution as of yet, or had it broken out, it may have been crushed. And that's from Bibliotheca in 1856. The ministers of the revolution were like the Puritan predecessors, bold and fearless in the cause of their country. No class of men contributed more to carry forward the revolution and to achieve our independence than did the ministers. By their prayers, their patriotic sermons, and their services, they rendered the highest assistance to the civil government, the army, and the country. Quoting from B.F. Morris in 1864. So the pastors were instrumental in leading the people to do the right thing. One more quote quickly. Had ministers been the only spokesman of the rebellion, had Jefferson, the Adamses, and James Otis never appeared in print, the political thought of the revolution would have followed almost exactly the same line in the sermons of the patriotic ministers we find expressed every possible refinement of the reigning political faith. So these some of the lines in the Declaration of Independence were almost direct quotes from some of the sermons that these guys preached. Freedom, God-given freedom, which today they're trying to take away from us.
Well, yeah, I have. We could we could spend the whole show on just that itself. But do you feel as though like ministers and clergy today are afraid to speak out?
Yes, I do.
Is it all because of maybe the separation of church and state and the afraid that maybe they're gonna lose their tax exempt status or something, or what is?
I say let them threaten, because if they first of all if they know where that line came from, they would know that they're talking out of their ear. It's ridiculous. Are you going to be afraid of God? Or are you going to be afraid of man? That's what it boils down to.
Right.
And to me, if you are not going to preach the truth, then get out of the ministry. If you're more afraid of what man says than you are of what God says, then get out of the ministry. Our kids need some heroes. Our kids have the wrong heroes today. What's wrong with having a pastor that's a real man? I mean, that's a real man that you can respect and you can emulate. What's wrong with that? Today, I'm a preacher. I don't hang around preachers. I don't like preachers.
Well,
half of them haven't got a backbone. Half of them.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, turning the other cheek, and you said you understood that, but if somebody was there to harm somebody that you knew and cause physically harm, you just take the firearm that's on your side there and take care of it.
Well, you got to obey the law, and especially God's law. If you obey God's law, obviously it's just like guns. I tell people that guns kill people just like spoons make people fat. It's ridiculous.
Oh my God.
So I've been teaching hunter trapper education courses now for 20 years, so kids can get their hunting licenses. And I tell the kids, you can take a firearm and load it and put it on the wall and leave it there for 200 years. It'll never kill anybody. Because murder is in the heart of man. If you take the guns away, they'll use sticks, they'll use rocks, they'll use a chair. They'll choke you. It doesn't much matter. So murder is a heart issue. It's not a weapon issue.
Yeah,
so
I couldn't have said that. We're getting back down. Believe it or not, the time flew by. That whole thing, separation of church and state. What was that all about? I mean, you said that if people knew where that was from, and how do you relate to that?
Well, if you check history, anybody that makes that statement to me says this: I am completely ignorant of history.
Right.
That's what they're saying. I'm a moron when it comes to history.
And why is that?
Check the history.
Okay.
Separation church and state. Where do we find that? The whole thing was written to keep government out of religion, not religion out of government.
Right.
Believe it or not, regardless of what they said about Bill Clinton, morals do count.
Yeah.
They do count. Your morals, everything I do, my morals base my decisions upon that. How I feel about things, what my factor of right and wrong is. That's going to affect everything I do. But if I think something that's ungodly and wicked is okay, and I do that, How's that going to affect my family and my society? It makes no sense. It's ridiculous to even say those things. But we're dealing, common sense is dead. The government has none. The government needs to go to the proctologist and have its head taken out of its rectum. I mean, that's where it is,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
So
I'm not going to have too much argument here.
before we close, let me just say this again. I really am burdened for pastors to do the right thing and speak the truth and teach their people who to vote for. If an individual is wicked, you need to point that out. Now, legally, they say you can't tell people who to vote for. Okay, but you can sure tell them who not to vote for. and if anybody is embraced liberalism at its core, which is nothing more than socialism and communism, you cannot listen. This is going to get me in trouble. I'll say it anyway. You cannot be a liberal and be a good Christian. It's impossible. You can't do it because liberalism is anti-Bible.
Yeah, we're going to have to get into that conversation one day and dig a little bit more and have you back up and talk about that, exactly. Because I would think that we probably could bring people up. And actually, if we did have people, that would be a great conversation, a great show to have. Is just let it rip and all those things. But once again, here. Be able to get a hold of you is we are jbc.org,
Mm-hmm.
correct? That is the website.
Yes, sir.
Is it 570-576?
756.
756. Just giving me that again.
570.
Yep.
756.
Okay.
2265.
2265.
Yeah, and our email is JACK, the word Jack, and then if you just drop the IST off the Baptist, so it would be JACKB as in boy, A, P as in Paul, T as in Tom, Jack Bapt at echoes.net. ECHOES.
And I think I have that from your email.
Yep.
So
that's it.
So listen, interesting conversation here, Andy.
Yeah, it was great stuff.
Have you back.
How about the comeback?
I'm gonna,
Stop by the church sometime.
because we do, and we do give a voice to a lot of different people. But that would be an interesting topic, and somebody else to that might be in the ministry that might have a little different take on that. But
I'm sure they do.
Well, no, that's good. That's fine. But you're not afraid. Listen, if what you're saying resonates with people or certain people, at least they know where you stand on certain issues. You're not sugarcoating this.
No, I don't know how I can't even spell that. But the bottom line is this: every pastor has to be accountable for his own flock.
Yeah.
So I have to give an account to God for my flock and my leadership. So what another pastor does, it is none of my business.
Right.
None of my business. But I all I'm saying is that if the pastors of this country would teach the Bible in context and teach them right from wrong and not be afraid of God, of men, fear God more than men, and teach their people how to vote, we would not have the morons we have in politics.
There you go, Andy. Fear God more than men. Couldn't end it in a better way. So there you have it, folks. We're done with Jasikoff and Friends, and thanks for joining us, Pastor Haskell. And when we come back, it'll be Sanity Check, and we have another whole issue and a whole different thing about the Middle East and letters from Putin and all kinds of good stuff. So hang with us, guys, and you've been listening to Twigs Cafe Radio.